Hello. My name is Gerard Mutabazi Amani, and welcome to GMA Talk, your most beloved, awesome favorites, all the adjective you can think of to describe awesomeness, goodness, favoritismness talk show in town. So GMA Talk will be covering everything related to politics, everything related to refugees, in terms of here in Canada and around the world. We'll be looking at the day-to-day happenings in terms of in the local, in terms of the national, and also in terms of international. So first of all, something that I wanted to talk about today, or something that I wanted to address with you today, is the ongoing pandemic in terms of COVID-19, otherwise known as coronavirus. We have seen a lot of coverage in terms of how this virus has interrupted the daily lives of people, whether it's those in government, whether it's citizens, whether it's tourism, or whether it's hospitality, you name it. This COVID-19 has really interrupted and turned around the daily lives of people from around the world. But something which hasn't received really enough coverage, or even hardly any coverage of, is the impact that the COVID-19 has had to refugees around the world. As we all know that the refugees who are in refugee camps, mostly and notedly in the developing world, where you get a lot of refugees in a refugee camp, most of the time this refugees mobility issues is very challenging in terms of moving around, and now this COVID-19 has added to the mobility issues in the refugee camps, and also sanitation issue, water issue, toilet issues. So these are some of the things which you haven't really been hearing of how the COVID-19 has affected refugee on day-to-day base. And recently, now past few weeks, we have heard of an outbreak in Bangladesh, in a refugee camp which hosts Myanmar refugees, otherwise known as also Burma refugees. So there's a lot of things which refugees are going through. On a normal basis, refugees face with a lot of challenges. Now imagine with this pandemic that has come as a result of shutting down the borders, as a result of mobility being restrained. So it's been a very challenge to refugees' lives. Has been interrupted around the world. So maybe maybe this is also some of the things which we should see in the media, or our leaders should be talking about, in terms of how they're helping refugees how they're helping refugees around the world, in terms of sanitation, in terms of awareness, or in terms of education, or in terms of just educating people to stay safe, and in terms of some of the refugee camps around the world, they're really crammed in terms of there's a lot of people on one site, or there's most of the time they are overcrowded and then they should be. So I hope and wish that media and governments and day-to-day citizen really should think more in terms of what is happening in the refugee camp around the world, and how government and organizations and citizens can help and support refugees even during these challenging times. Because really, in challenging times is when we should really step up more to help the most vulnerable, to help the most weak, and the most less fortunate population around us. And most of the time, the most vulnerable and the most weak and the most less fortunate in a nation, you found maybe there are refugees in a refugee camp, or refugee just in terms of in the city life, having a challenge making ends meet, because most of the refugees, sometimes they have small vendors, or sometimes they have small businesses, or sometimes they have to go out to seek in terms of getting the support that they need. So when the measures have been put in place in terms of restriction on mobility, in terms of restriction on people moving in and out of camp, and then it restricts some of the refugee in terms of improving their living condition, but and then it also makes them to continue relying more and more on the handouts, on some of the generous organization and government, which most of the time uh, they do need the support to be added on what is being given in order for their life and situation to continue to improve. So today, yesterday, and forever, really, we should stand with refugees. We should talk about situations that is affecting refugees around the world. And here on the GMA Talk, we'll be looking into that really more in depth on refugees and the challenges and the successes that refugees have gone through or are going through, and also the political means around the world and the challenges relating to that. So, and one of the things also which we'll look at next week and the days to come is the Yemen situation, especially during this time of coronavirus and COVID, in other words, COVID-19. Also, when we talk about sanitation, when we talk about soap, when we talk about water, when we talk about hand sanitizer. So when you get a lot of people in movement, displacement, and refugees, these things are very highly a challenge. And organizations such as UNHCR really is calling for global leaders and global organizations to do more in terms of help refugees around the world, and also Yemen displaced people, and also Yemenis refugees, which most of the time this conflict has been going on for many years, and sometimes we tend to forget that there is a conflict happening in Yemen, and people running for their daily life. People, millions are displaced, millions have left for other destinations. So that's it for today. Stay tuned more in depth in terms of Yemen and the challenges that is happening in Yemen, and then also the support that is needed in Yemen, and we'll see how that goes in terms of supporting and helping each other in the region. So yeah, so next week we'll start covering Yemen, but also other times and other days we'll be going from other countries and regions. So next week will be Yemen, and then we'll look at the South Sudanese situations in terms of the displacement, and also millions of refugees living in East Africa.